studios in New York City. This is Charlie Rose.
Anthony Hopkins, Sir Anthony Hopkins is here. He is one of our best actors. His latest role is Burt Munro in The World's Fastest Indian. Here is the trailer for the film. At this year's Golden Globe ceremony, he was presented with the Cecil B. DeMille Award for Lifetime Achievement. I am pleased to have Sir Anthony Hopkins back at this table. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, tell me, Burt Munro. You said to me as we began to look at the trailer, this is the most fun movie, the most what?
Well, I think it's the most pleasant movie I've made in many years. Probably the most enjoyable, because he was a pretty free spirit, not like those other characters I've played. And he was a living soul. He died in 1978, and he broke the world speed record on this particular class of bike at Bonneville Salt Flats in God, I've forgotten the date now.
But when he was like 60-something?
67. And he's a remarkable man. He said that you can live more in 5 minutes on the back of a bike than you can in an entire lifetime. And he was one of those free spirits, for want of a better phrase. Everyone liked him. He was a hero in New Zealand. And Roger Donaldson, the director, wrote the script many years ago. He interviewed Burt Munro. There is a documentary, a DVD, coming out, I think, later this year. And Roger sent me the script, and first he said, look at the DVD, the documentary, and I looked at it. He said, now read the script. So I read the script, and I thought it was terrific. And that's what it is, an adventure of the spirit.
All right, we'll get back to that. But here is a director who, when you were making...
The Bounty. That's right.
Right.
Yes.
Because you were young, knew it all.
Feisty, I knew it all. Yeah.
And
so was Roger.
Didn't need a director.
Well, Roger...
And Roger was a director who thought, I know it all.
Yeah, he was like that. And he came from Aussie. He came from Australia.
Yeah.
And I think he was uneasy with the Brits. And I remember he said to me, I don't need any lessons from you lot. I think he said something. And of course, that was a red rag to a bull. It was me, and I was arrogant. I was very
I'll show you.
Oh, yeah, I'll show you. And we had an interesting time. We fought, and we didn't actually punch up, but we were going to kill each other. And then the years passed by, but it was a good movie, and he's a terrific director. And then we met, I think it was an Oscar party about 5 years ago, and he said, hello, Tony. He said, well, maybe we can work again one day, so we did. And we got on so well. He still does a lot of takes. But I thought, well, this is the program, and go along with it.
Now, see, that's something important. You somehow had gotten wiser.
Yeah.
And you said, that's the program. I'm not going to get upset about how many takes he did.
Yeah.
I'll just go with the flow.
Well, they pay me to do that, so I thought, well, he's the boss. You know, I've learned to respect directors more than I ever did. Because you think, well, they're the guys, they know what they want to do, and people like Spielberg and Donaldson and a whole bunch and Oliver Stone, they know what the movie's about. Actors just have to show up. If somebody told me 10, 15 years ago that change would come in my attitude, I'd say never, not in a million years. But you get older, that's the great advantage of getting older.
Okay, but other than age, why do you think it came to you? Was it just a period of time?
I think so. I think that I've been around a long time. 50 years ago, I ventured into this business by sheer accident as a student, and muddled along for years. A very, very fortunate, tremendously fortunate actor. And I had a bit of talent, but on top of that was a great deal of good fortune and destiny. I don't understand how that works. And I've been in this industry, in the movie industry, for many years, and I've been given such a good life. I've had a wonderful life. I've had my ups and downs, and it's only recently that I'd say in the last 5, 6 years, I've begun to deeply appreciate what has happened to me. And working with someone like Roger, or any director worth his salt, somebody who knows what he's doing and is dedicated, I think, well, what's the problem? And that's what they want to do. He does his job. He allows me to do mine. And there was a weather change in my life as well, marrying for the third time this lovely wife, my wife Stella. And she's been instrumental in calming me down, opening me up, because I used to be very shut down. She's sort of opened
You always
me
wanted to be alone. I remember having conversations with you when you would say...
She won't leave me alone.
I'd say, what are you going to do? And you say, well, I'm off. And I'd say, who are you going with? And you'd say, nobody.
No, that's right. I travel around the world on my own and get in my car and travel across America. And I was happy being on my own. I loved living in my own mind. And I suppose I'm a bit of an introvert. And she's managed to pull me out of that. And she never leaves me alone to myself too long because she thinks it's unhealthy to be on your own too long.
She met you when you were in a parade. You were the Grand Marshal of a parade or something?
That's right.
And she sees you.
She saw me, and I was sitting in the back of a car doing my 4th of July.
Whatever a Grand Marshal does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
and then
Nixon
she has an antique store. Are you doing Nixon?
Yeah, she has an antique store, and she saw me, and for some reason she felt that she knew me somehow.
Yeah.
And then she just waited. And one day, a year later, I walked into a store. She said, "Hi." I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I wanted to buy some furniture from her. She gave me a chair, I remember. And we got together, and as the year, and then we went out together, and then we split up a little while, and then we went back together. And she's been tremendously powerful in my life in opening me up into writing music, which has been my passion all my life, ever since I was a young kid, and to paint, which is also a passion of mine. But I never had the confidence, or maybe I was cynical or closed down enough to say, to heck with that, who needs to do that? I'm an actor. But I was getting a little weary of that side of my life as well, just acting all the time, which I've enjoyed. But she said, why don't you... She saw my scripts. I was always doodling and doing these landscapes in pen and ink.
Because you read them over and over and over.
So I doodled to make the script look pretty. I said, these are wonderful. Why don't you do something with them? So some friends of ours opened a gallery in San Antonio last year. And Stella said to me, I want you to do 100 paintings. I said, 100? So I did them over a period of about 3 months, these little landscapes. And then she got me interested in acrylics. I've never painted before. I've never taken an art class. I was saying to you, the thing is just do it.
Yeah.
And it's
I said to you, I'd like to paint.
Yes.
You said, what you got to do is
Just do it.
Take lessons, just start painting.
And don't analyze it. And I don't know what I'm doing, but I do it, and it seems to come out okay. And it's the same with composing. I'm having some music performed in San Antonio in May with the San Antonio Symphony. And I honestly, I read music and I understand music, but I don't know the technicalities of it, but I can compose it. So I don't worry whether it's good or bad. People seem to like it, so I think, okay, well, if that's the judgment or the yardstick, then so be it.
How did you learn to read music?
When I was a boy, I was about 5 years of age, my mother sent me to Mrs. Jeffries in Wern Road, Port Talbot, and I started on playing scales and all that. My mother said to Mrs. Jeffries, she said, can you teach him the Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven? She said, I think that's a bit advanced for him. I was about 5.
A bit young for that.
Yeah, but I remember something. I always remember my father bought me these books, the Arthur Mee's Children's Encyclopedias, and there was a music section in them. They had these paintings and artists' impressions of Beethoven sitting alone in his... doing this was the bombardment of Vienna, and he was going deaf. And that so inspired me, I started plonking out on the piano, trying to make sounds. And then I left it for 40 years, and then recently came back to it. And now I've started writing for the first time in my life, and it's a whole new life for me. I carry on acting, but painting and music are sort of meditations. And in a way, well, not in a way, but specifically by doing it for fun and for free and helping these people out in the gallery, and I'm doing a charity one for the public library in San Antonio in May for a program called Born to Read. And by doing it this way, without judgment, without self-criticism, it's probably the best trip I've ever been on, better than all the road trips.
And do you ever think, you have to come to this point, you couldn't have willed yourself to be there earlier. All the things that you went through. Do you look back at all and say, God, I wish I'd discovered something, a Stella influencing my life, so that I would have found writing, and I would have found painting, and I would have found music. It might have been a different person through...
No, I think it's the way it was meant to be.
You just take it the way it is.
Pretty good life, and
well, it's been a great life.
Yeah, it's a wonderful life. And at this time in my life, I've just turned 68, And it's been an incredible journey. And now I look back and I think, well, that's the way it was. I tended to be a little bit depressed in my other years. And I go through those sometimes.
A bout with alcohol a little bit or something?
Yeah, that's all gone and over with now. But that's a tendency of mine to be a little introverted and a little closed down, and still has opened me up and say it's much healthier to be out there and give out and express yourself. And having a channel, for example, this little gallery in San Antonio is the sort of outlet for my paintings, and I don't want anything for them except if they can just pay me a bit of the percentage so I can pay for the framing.
Yeah.
I just get a pleasure of looking at them and start saying, that's a magnificent masterpiece. I don't know if it is not, but I think, who cares?
Exactly.
Just give it away.
And you'll come in and do something for the library and for the gallery, and everything will be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that because you were intense and closed down the way you were, that enabled you to better play those performers that you played, all of the people that, whether it was Richard Nixon or whether it was Silence of the Lambs?
Oh, yes, I think so.
You did?
Yes, it was rich stuff.
And you had something to draw on. And if you'd been a more open and freer person, you might not have been as...
I think that's true. I think you're right. I think I had I don't want to make it sound tremendously significant or dramatic, but I think I had a reservoir of depression and psychic pain, whatever.
that you could reach into.
Oh, yes. I was a mixed-up kid, as a young kid. I always felt like an outsider. So those parts of myself were very useful, and I can still draw on them. I mean, I can still use all that. I mean, I'm a very emotional, volatile.
Yeah. You still remember it, so you can still draw back on it.
But I tend in my life to be closed off a bit. I don't like expressing emotion. So as an actor, I'm able to express it. And now through music and painting, even more so. Yeah. And so it's a healthier life now. I feel that it's a healthier life. I'm probably having more fun than I've ever had.
Because you're giving more, because you're more open, because of all the things you say?
I guess so, and it's an evolution. It's an unfolding of my life, and I've had a tremendous life. I mean, the alcoholism was one side of it. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I mean, I drank myself almost into the gutter.
Somebody once told me there was a great story about Robert Morley. Was it Robert Morley was having dinner with you or something and said, "Why do you drink so much?"
1969, he said, "Why do you drink so much?" And I said, "Well, I know." He said, "It's because I'm an actor." He said, "Well, it's crazy, you're going to kill yourself." And there was an old guy there who was an alcoholic, and he said to me, "I used to drink like you, Tony." I thought, "Oh, well, why aren't you drinking now?" He said, "Well, I'm an alcoholic," and I didn't quite figure out. Yeah. And then the penny dropped a few years later, and I sobered up. And it's been an amazing life, but I wouldn't have forgotten it. I wouldn't have missed it at all, because it was all part of my life. And I came here to New York in 1974, and it was the worst of times and the best of times for me. I was at that crossroads, and it was a rich time. It was just after Watergate, in fact. I came here to do Equus, and I remember drinking myself into a stupor, but looking back on it, I thought, God, that was a rich time as well, because I was a real fighter. But there's a time when you get a little old and you have to let go of the fight and say, okay, well, enough's enough.
You are also dyslexic. Are you?
I suppose I was. I suppose I am. Well,
Because there are a lot of creative people that are dyslexic.
Yes. I think I was. I was what would be branded as a poor student. I was called educationally way below the standard of my school.
Because you had trouble reading.
Reading, and so I sat at the back of the classroom, in a stupor of confusion. Not because I was different. I was living in a different world in my mind. And I couldn't figure anything out, and I didn't know what I was doing there. And looking back on it, I'm convinced that we are there for a reason, that everything is destiny. Yeah. And my so-called inability to learn was a great gift, because I've used that gift of whatever it was, lack, to push myself forward into life. Now I read so much. Yeah. That it's I read and read and read, and I play the piano, and I'm obsessive. I play Bach and I play all that stuff. Yeah. But it's enriching, so I wouldn't have missed any of it. It was all a gift. Yeah,
exactly. It is an evolution that you have to go through. Yeah. Did you ride motorcycles before you read about Burt Munro?
I did once in the army. I was in national service, and I fell off very badly. I didn't break anything, but I was really bruised, and I thought, that's the last. I said to Roger, so I got onto the bike and did a bit of riding on this.
Yeah. Because if you're riding 70 miles an hour, which he was doing, this was an Indian motorcycle.
That's right, 1920.
These were the Forerunners. I mean, these were at the time.
Massachusetts Indian, yes.
Yeah.
I think they started about the beginning of the last century, I think.
And they were considered great. And in fact,
Oh,
I
yeah.
read somewhere the other day that an entrepreneur is trying to restart them. Or,
Yeah.
You know, sort of kick off the
That's right.
renewal of the company.
And on the opening of the film in Los Angeles, I mean, we had a premiere of it, a showing, and all the Indian guys came over with their bikes. I saw the one.
All right, let's take a look at this. Here is where Monroe races on the beach in New Zealand to earn money for his trip to America. Here it is. In the movie and in his life, what did the bike and racing and winning mean to Bert?
Life itself, I think, just life.
It was what he did and what he wanted
It's what he
to
did. He said, you can live more in 5 minutes on the back of a bike than in a lifetime. It's better than being a cabbage. And having a couple of nice, pretty ladies around is a nice idea too. He was a great old guy, and everyone loved him because I think he faced death all the time. He came off the bike many times. He was in a coma. He was quite a remarkable man. He said, once you're dead, and you never come back.
Now, I'm listening to you in the voice of, I guess, what Bert Monroe sounded
That's
like.
right, yeah.
How did you get the voice?
Well, I listened to Bert himself.
And he was on a documentary?
That's right, yeah. And he came from South New Zealand, which is an easier accent for me to do than the North accent. It sounds a little more like Irish or Cornish. And the trick is, I think, is not to try and become so accurate, because then it becomes a mask and you become a mimic like Frank Gorshin or Rich Little. Great. So what I do, it's like airbrushing it or just painting in certain sounds, and I watch his face in the documentaries, and I tried on the documentary film and try to imitate or impersonate moves of his head, the way he talked, and he talked a little bit like that, you know, and he had a bit of a rough voice, and he was a bit of a rough diamond. And once you get the knack of that, what Stanislavski would call building a character, you know, once you get the knack of that, then
The knack of what, the way they...
well, it's in acting, I think it's the Stanislavski called it the mask. Building a character, Michael Chekhov talked about it, is you get some physical thing that you can hold on to, and suddenly you think, that's it, I've got it. I remember we went to New Zealand, and that first day filming in New Zealand, and I was surrounded by a lot of Kiwis there, a lot of New Zealanders, and I thought, well, I'm going to be tested now. And the first morning's shooting was making that cylinder in the shed. And I had these old dungarees on and big boots, and I felt like my grandfather, because my grandfather had a shed. And the shed is a very macho thing in New Zealand, a man in his shed. And I suddenly felt like my grandfather, and I felt my shoulders, and I thought, yeah, I've got it. And then from then on, it's automatic. It takes you over, and you're conscious all the time, but it's a very useful thing to have. And you build into it, or you look for signs or clues and stuff, and the boots and the overalls, and the way he would do things, and, you know, his hand shook a little bit, you know, and picking up this and doing that. And then you think, that's it, you've got the feeling of it. But you have to be near that age to get it anyway. But that's all it is
But what did you have to know about Nixon to do Nixon?
Well, I watched all his, every speech I could. I watched the farewell to the White House staff over and over again. Just before I went to bed at night, I put the DVD in. And I've watched that haunting walk down to the helicopter before he...
He turned that last turn
Yes.
to say goodbye,
And I thought, what must he feel like? What must it be like to be inside that face and that strange fixed smile as he was saying goodbye? And I thought, what must it be like? And then I met people who knew him quite well. And there was a side of his nature which he was always concerned about, his staff's family life and
In
things
fact,
like
the
that.
staff at the White House used to say nice things about
Oh,
him.
they did. There was a man, one of the security men told me, he was an old man. He said, I ran into President Nixon one day. I was in a hurry, and Nixon said, don't rush, you'll get hurt. He said, how's your family? And he said he was a very nice man in that. And then the other side of his political nature, you think, well, that was a tragedy, because why did he do that? And he brought disgrace on himself in the White House and American politics. Yeah. But a fascinating man. I think Ben Bradley said on an interview with 60 Minutes, he said the most fascinating man he would want to meet was to spend some hours with would be Richard Milhous Nixon.
Is that what he said?
On the 60 Minutes. Yeah. When they were talking, when this was
Nixon. And then to appreciate this, Bradley was a great friend of John Kennedy.
Yes.
A great friend.
Yeah.
And he thought Nixon would be the more interesting person.
He did.
To talk to.
Because he said he was so
Doris Kearns
tortured.
told me it was Lyndon Johnson. Doris Kearns, you know, the biographer, just wrote a book on Lincoln, said Johnson was by far the most interesting person I ever met.
Yeah. Yes.
Because he had this appetite that was larger than life.
Yeah.
you know, and also all of them, Nixon certainly, Johnson certainly, brilliant, very good mind. You know, but a flaw, a kind of despotic flaw.
Well, President Clinton said, and I met him a few times, and he said, when we were doing Nixon, he said he would phone Nixon up on foreign policy points, and Nixon would talk to him over the phone from wherever he was in California,
wherever he was,
San Clemente, and would give him advice on China, Russia, and President Clinton said he's an amazing man, a tremendous mind. He said, but flawed.
Yeah. You and Clinton became friends, didn't you?
Yeah,
you did a little bit of touring or something with him?
Yes, we went out to South America.
Is that right?
I was up in Las Vegas with some friends of mine, the Greenspans, and
this is Hank Greenspan that owns the newspaper?
The son. It was Brian and Mary Greenspan, and Bill Clinton was up there making a speech for the Democrats, and it was just a small informal party at the Four Seasons, and he gave this extraordinary speech on communication, an amazing speech. I thought this man is a genius because he communicates so well.
He's the best.
Nobody can do that. And I said to him afterwards, I had met him before, I'd been to the White House, and I said, what an extraordinary gift that is. And again, he said, come down to South America. Do you want to come to Brazil next week? So we went down, and then it was bizarre. He decided he wanted to buy a bikini for his daughter. Yeah. So we went down to Ipanema, and it was chaos. The
crowds everywhere.
Oh, yeah. But he's an amazing guy.
He may be the most popular. I mean, he's one of the most popular people.
The greatest communicator in history of today, I think.
I talked to somebody over the weekend who'd seen him make a speech, which there were no cameras, about economics, and said it was most penetrating because he had the ability, in a sense, to translate it in terms that this person who knew little about deficits or things like that.
That's it.
But he explained it to her in a way that was clear and that was his gift as a politician. It's also that, like to go into any room and be able to look people. Because you once said a thing about people like Nixon and others, and Hitler, who you did, not to make any comparison between them, that they never would look you in the face.
No.
You said this recently in an interview I saw. They could, because what?
Well, the power, you watch Saddam Hussein or Stalin or Hitler, I'm not saying that, but you watch them, they never look at people. They're alone in this bubble. Yeah. Stalin particularly, and Saddam Hussein, they never actually look at people, which makes them pretty awesome. But the extraordinary thing about President Clinton is that it's almost like a nervous stick. He plays cards all the time.
I know he does, yeah.
And I can't even play Snap. I don't know what a card. I'm not interested.
Right.
And any moment he's got to play cards. It's like a nervous activity.
I don't know why he does that. I know he does that all the time, and late into the night.
Yeah. He plays with Brian Greenspan over and over again. I mean, I sat in on one of the sessions. I couldn't follow it. I felt so stupid.
Let me come back to acting and the things that you do and the things that you play. Are there? At one point, you talked to me about Napoleon. You'd like to play Napoleon.
I did at one time.
You passed that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Too old for that.
How about, there's the thing about Hemingway, too.
Yeah, that.
In fact, Donaldson didn't he have a screenplay or something?
He did, but then that went into somebody else's hands, and he said, it's pointless trying to chase it. And we were trying to get to Cuba to do that, because it would have been authentically...
Oh, I'd love to go. Have you been to Cuba?
I've never been there.
I haven't either. Love to go.
Hemingway's house is still there, and Castro keeps that, it's there intact. But, no, I think we've let that go now. It may come back, you never know.
Do you still want to play Lear?
No. I've done all that now. I am directing my own film.
You don't want to play Lear?
No, I've done it. I did. Sometimes I get a mad moment thinking it wouldn't be wonderful to have a go at that again. But working in the theatre is,
you don't want
for
to
me, it's it's too much.
Because life is so good that you don't want, you don't want to take the time that would be necessary to...
That's it. I'm lazy, I guess. Well, to me, it was one long wet Wednesday afternoon in the Waterloo Road at the Old Vic for most of my youth. And those endless matinees, and I couldn't do it. I just can't do it. I've tried it. It's like taking the first drink. This time I'll beat it. But I can't do that. I am so restless, and I love life so much. I'm too restless to do that. And I start to see the funny side of acting when I'm on stage. So I'm a bit bad to work with. I start cracking up.
What do you mean the funny side? You start. It's amusing to you.
Yeah, I start laughing.
Because it's what?
Well, I don't know. Maybe this is wrong, but I feel it's pretentious. I've been on stage, and I suddenly look at the other actor, and I start laughing. He said, "What are you laughing at?" I said, "What are we doing?" There was a wonderful actor back in Britain in the 1920s, and he was at Stratford. I I can't remember his name. It wasn't Bransby Williams, but anyway, he was one of the great old Barnstorm actors. This is about 1921, and he was playing Richard III, and he was on stage one afternoon, and he looked down. People saw him on the stage, looked down at his shoes and then at his hand. He started taking his clothes off. Got into the wings, took all his clothes off, got dressed, and went home.
And never came back
He
to the
said,
stage?
"What are you doing?" He said, "This is the stupidest life I've ever lived. I can't do this. This is not a life for a grown-up man." He became a farmer and died at the age of 80.
That's amazing. And was very happy, right?
Very happy.
Yeah. Because there were people that... Did you understand? Did you ever talk to Brando about acting? Because
No.
he came to some kind of different conclusion, but it was that it wasn't something that he wanted to do. I mean, he wanted to do a little bit. I once said to him, "Do you have contempt for it?" And he said, "No, I don't have contempt. It's not something I
Bored him, I guess.
care about."
He was
Yeah.
one of the greatest of all time, I guess.
I would think so.
Yeah, I think he was revered by everyone.
Yeah.
But he had his private notions about it. No, I'm not cynical about it. I mean, I've had a wonderful life as an actor, but now I enjoy it more as an exercise.
Yeah, but here's my question. My question is, to be what you were, you know, and are, but were in terms of all those performances that required so much of you, you could not you had to have a certain burning intensity, and you couldn't have all these other things that you enjoyed in life. I mean, your companion, in part, was alcohol.
That's right, yeah.
And the work.
Yes.
Alcohol and work.
Yeah. Well, the worst thing for one is perfectionism. To actually believe that you've got to become the part. Well, that's bad acting when you try to become the part, because you can't, because you're only you anyway, and the part is just a part of you. You know?
Yeah, but before you do that, let me just tell you one story I know about you, which is that I read about Donaldson, in which he said, you talked about the mutiny on the thing, and or maybe on the set, and he was saying, "You are becoming Bly."
Yeah.
You know, off camera.
I see you thinking about September now. You wait till you see my Hitler.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I think what it is, if you go, I go over my lines over and over and over. And I remember we were doing one of the scenes in Bounty, and I'd learned this speech so well, so I knew it inside out, backwards. I could do it standing in my head. And they kept the camera rolling, so I went and improvised more and more. And the camera was rolling, and I thought they're never going to end. And I saw the film recently, and there it is. It's improvised, but an improvised speech. But if you do that, it does cost you something. How can I put it? Let me tell you, give you an example. I remember working with Olivia at the National Theatre, and he played Othello and many other parts. And he was an obsessive perfectionist. And it made him, he said that it made him ill, because he did it so much. He was so obsessed with his work that it caused I wouldn't say mental illness, but it caused something, an imbalance in his life. And he wasn't a happy man, he told me, at that point in his life. And I think it's necessary to enjoy your life as well as being good at what you do.
I mean, the lesson out of all this, I guess, is that in the end, the life will be better if there's balance.
Yes, and I think the work is better finally as well.
To find balance, balance in family, balance in companionship and love, in interest and all of that, rather than just being.
That's right.
The old joke in America is that no one on their deathbed ever said, "I wish I'd spent more time at the office."
No. No, it is balance, and I wouldn't say that I'm the most balanced person, because I'm not.
Yeah.
I still have tendencies to be dark and be a little sad sometimes. But it has
sad is okay. I mean,
sad or depressed
yeah,
sometimes. But God, what have I got to be depressed about?
Yeah.
But sometimes these things come up, and you don't know what they are, and you don't know why you have these feelings or these thoughts. But I live a wonderful life, and I have this beautiful wife, Stella, and we just have a good time and enjoy a few friends. We're not great social.
Yeah, you love California.
I love California.
But the climate, the colors, everything.
On the beach, looking down the sea.
But let me just understand this too. You basically believe, and I think I believe this too, is that you had to go through what you went through. You had to enjoy it. You had to be that way because that was who you were. In other words, you had to pass through that. You had to pass through that passage.
Yes, I wouldn't have missed it. It was a good time, and it was a bad time.
Yeah.
But it was something that I wouldn't miss.
And you look back at those performances in Silence of the Lambs and in Nixon and on all of those performances, on stage and on film.
That's right.
And say, Well done.
Well done, well done.
Well done.
Well, the thing, though, is for people in this profession to complain about their lives is bad taste.
Yeah.
Because people can say, give me a break, you know.
Exactly.
This industry supplies people with a way of life that is astonishing. To complain about it, on top of it, say, well, you know, I've got my... Come on. You know, people won't come out of their dressing
You've worked
rooms.
in the most exotic locations.
Yeah.
You collaborated with some of the most creative people
Yeah.
in the world. You made tons of money.
Yeah.
And you had all the advantages of fame,
Yeah,
whatever they
you can't
are,
complain
and some of the
about it.
shortcomings, but all the advantages. Why
Yeah.
are you complaining?
Go and work in a hospital. Go and work
exactly.
be a nurse or a doctor. See what that's
Yeah.
about.
Go teach school and make,
Sure.
you know, all those kinds of things. Yeah. I agree with you. Burt Monroe, back to Burt. He died at how old? Why was he dead?
He was 78. He died.
So he had a good life after
he was as
after
old
he
as
won the
century.
race. Huh?
Yes, he did. And he went back many times to Bonneville.
Yeah.
And I mean, this film is just a little piece of his life. And it's, you know, some of it is fictionalized, of course. There's a relationship with a little boy in it, and Roger designed this when he wrote the script, as seen through a boy's eyes. But it turned out at the end of the movie, as we were finishing the movie in New Zealand, there was a young boy who used to escape to Bert's because his father used to beat him mercilessly, almost to death, and he used to hide out in Bert's place. And he wrote us a letter. He'd grown up. He was now a full grown adult. And he'd been in a lot of trouble with the law because he was such a bitter, angry man, because his father had beat him almost to death. But Bert used to look after him and hide him.
Yeah.
And the father would come and he said, Bert, he said, no, I haven't seen him. I don't know where he is. Yeah. And that's truth and fiction.
Yeah. All right, roll tape. This is one more scene. This is where you asked Jim, who's played by Chris Crawford, to help race at Bonneville. Here it is. When I was watching that, we were talking about a whole variety of things, and in terms of story about Bert, who would hide a little kid.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, who was at his father. And then we started talking about Olivier while we were watching that. And I mentioned this story. Tell me the story about Olivier, Richard II, and he had a brilliant night.
It was Richard III. It was
Richard III,
just, yeah, this one, the famous one he made a movie. Well, he said he couldn't, he was during rehearsals, he couldn't get it. He knew all the lines, but he couldn't get to that point where he could identify with it or be it. And he was ready to go on that night, the first night, and some of his friends went backstage. He said, get your money back. I'm terrible. He said, I can't even get there. And he had this wig and all that. And he was on stage, and they heard the curtain go to, in those days they had the old-fashioned front-of-house curtains. And he heard the audience quietening down. He had a big key, and he had to turn the key in this lock at the beginning. And he said he heard the swish of the curtain, they saying off stage, you know, house lights out. And he heard shh, and stunned silence. And as he turned the key, he went chunk. And he said a chill went up his spine. He said, I've locked them in with me. And he said, I turned around, he said, and as I came down stage, he saw people in the front row going. And he said this voice came out of him, and he was flying that night, and he became Richard III. And like Keane and those people, those great actors, and he said, and he doesn't remember much about it, except this voice took over, and this performance took over. And afterwards, it was John Mills, actually, who went backstage after to see him. He said, that was fantastic. Amazing performance. He said, I know. He said, aren't you happy? He said, I don't think I'll be able to do it again. Because he was in, as they say, the zone.
Yeah,
like
we were talking about
player.
sports, and
Yeah,
sometimes hitters
yeah.
will see the ball comes in, it looks like a basketball when they want to hit it.
Yeah.
But how many times have you been in the zone in your life?
I used to get into the zone after a hangover. I was on stage doing a very difficult play many years ago at the Old Vic, and I'd been out the night before, and I'd been drinking up a storm, and next day I came in, and I didn't have a headache, but I was, and I thought, how am I going to get on stage? And I walked on stage that afternoon for the rehearsal, and suddenly all my fears, all my doubts left, and it was like I was given the reins of a horse or a chariot, and I was able to go with it, and I thought, that's being in the zone. The director said, that's it. And I think you can get there through pressure in some way, or through exhaustion. And I remember Oliver Stone put me under a lot of pressure on Nixon. And I thought, I'll never get this. I'll never, ever get it. And the Friday night before we were due to film, it was just before the 1st of May, 1995, and Oliver's got a habit of harassing actors. He does it for a reason. He said, come on, let's go. So I had to go into the sound stage, and it was in the Oval Office. It MGM or Sony. And I had the suit and everything on, and as I walked in, I said, "Oh, how are you doing?" And John Dean was there, the real John Dean. He said, "Oh my God, you've become him." And for that moment, I thought, yeah, I just felt right. And then from then on, there were odd days when I didn't feel quite right with it. But I remember the first few days, I thought, this is it, I've got the guy, I've finally got him. But it was through pressure, I think.
Now, I'm caught between two different ideas, and help me with this. One is that Katharine Hepburn once said, now maybe to you, that, listen, all you need to do is learn your lines and say them. Don't act.
That's what she said to me.
Now, what did that mean?
Well, I think she said what the best film actors do here in America is not to act. People like Humphrey Bogart.
And that was Spencer Tracy, wasn't it?
Spencer Tracy, Humphrey Bogart, James Cagney. And many other actors, people like Burt Lancaster and all those guys of that generation, they don't seem to act. They just come on from and they speak their lines.
Know their lines and speak them.
Yeah, and people would say, well, they're just personality actors. So like John Wayne, he's just personality. Well, what else is there? I mean, watch a John Wayne movie. He comes on, he tells you the story in his ways, doing his stuff. And he's very watchable. Watch Robert Mitchum, Bogart, all of them. Betty Davis. Well, she did act a bit, but Lana Turner, people like that, they were really, really good. Rita Hayworth, people like that, they were wonderful. Because they used themselves. And the studios, I suppose, took them and they said, well, this is what you are. And this is what you can do. And Dick Van Dyke said something to me once. He said, the thing about being a television star, as he was in the Dick Van Dyke Show, he said, the mistake is to try and go out and become somebody else. The audiences don't want you to. They want you to be Dick Van Dyke. They don't want you to be...
For the rest of your career, or...?
Well, he said that's something he gathered in himself. He didn't want to extend himself and become a, quote, dramatic actor. He was very good in what he did.
So he became the Dick Van Dyke character in different incarnations throughout his career. A comedic actor in a television series.
And he said people who try to expand beyond that, he was talking particularly about television. And,
I think it was true. Probably Carol O'Connor found the same thing true, too.
Yeah.
He became a character.
That's right.
Now, but here's the other thing, too, is that you study, and others, I know others this way, the best, in fact, they always say the best. Know your lines up one side, down. You have read them up one side and down the other. That whole notation stuff, all the asterisks and all that stuff was about learning the lines.
That's it.
You knew them, read them 200 times. Read the script, knew them. Not just knew them, they were inside of you. It wasn't just memorizing it, they just became part of you. Once you do that, you don't have to think about the lines, and you can just let whatever it is that's natural come alive. You can open yourself to be accessible to find...
Well, that's what it is. I'm going to be doing a film with Greg Hoblet and Ryan Gosling soon called Fracture. And I've been going over my script. And there's a speech in there, and I play another kind of Iceman, not quite like Hannibal Lecter, but another kind of a cold killer. But nothing like the Hannibal Lecter character. And I'm going through this script, and he's a very witty guy. And I'm looking through these lines, and I'm going through them. And some of the lines strike me as very funny. But as I'm reading that, I thought, this is what a sociopath would say. This is how he would do it. I can't really describe it on that. But by knowing the text so well, you have all the reference, encyclopedic reference that you need. All the information is there in the text. You can try and figure out what he had for breakfast and so on. But it doesn't help you at all. It may help you in your imagination, but it doesn't get you there. Maybe a simplistic way of doing it, but when I teach students or they ask me to help them, I say, just learn your lines. Learn it so well that you then never have to worry, because relaxation is the key. Once you're relaxed, you can be spontaneous, you can improvise within that text. You have a foundation, but you can relax and you can do whatever you want. You're so free, then you get into the zone.
Yeah. Doing this television show, I used to be known for preparing constantly, knowing, which is the equivalent of learning the lines, to do that. And I did it, but at the same time, I understood the value of relaxation. So if I was tired and had to make a choice between preparing more or taking a nap before doing this, I learned to take the nap, because it would just make me freer.
Yes.
And therefore, I could more likely call on whatever instincts there were to be more real and remember things.
That's right.
Than if I had came in exhausted, having over-prepared. I might have more information, but I'd have less me.
Yes, that's right.
You know?
See, relaxation is the
But
response.
it's true in sport. You don't. Are you an athlete at all? Do you play
No,
sport? Never have.
No.
But you love. I mean, you.
I love watching boxing. That's about my only...
Yeah. Have you ever played a boxer?
No, never. Never played. But to watch somebody like Muhammad Ali, I'm the greatest of all time, and the way he moved like a cat, and the seeming relaxation of that man, it's
And
extraordinary.
the quality of the mind.
Oh,
I mean,
brilliant.
I'm also struck by the notion that intelligence is expressed lots of ways. I mean, Muhammad Ali had an extraordinary genius.
Oh, yes. he was.
But part of the genius was in the gift of the physicality that he had, the grace that he had.
Yes.
Michael Jordan's, gift was at the same time. And part of the gift for Michael Jordan was simply the warrior spirit, the will to win,
Yeah.
all of that. We sort of come with a variety of kinds of skills that enable people to reach, a level of performance.
We watched Fred Astaire, the dancer.
Exactly.
Michael Jackson.
And instead of Fred Astaire, that he'll never make it. He's too ugly, too this and
Yeah.
too that.
He was a ballet dancer. I mean, it was amazing that it was like a ballet the way he danced. But he put a tremendous amount of effort into all his rehearsals, and he was quite tyrannical apparently with others. You had to be there with him, up to standard with him. But I remember what a dancer he was. It was effortless. But all those years, I once saw Bing Crosby doing a show at the. It was a charity show at the auditorium in Pasadena. The day he had his accident, he fell through the trapdoor. I didn't actually see that happen, but I saw him on stage. And he was getting on in years then, and they were just doing a rehearsal, and Crosby, he just did a little soft shuffle, and bum 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 bum. I thought, God, it was so moving to see all those years and years of experience and skill. And he had the bow tie hat. And he was an old man. I think, God, George Burns, these extraordinary talents, or Dick Van Dyke,
How about
wonderful.
Sinatra?
Ah, well, the greatest, wasn't he?
Did you see him? Did you ever know him?
I saw him. I met him in Vegas at Caesar's Palace years ago. The charisma and the ease on stage.
Even
his
though
voice was
physically
getting,
he was a small and
yeah, but the charisma when he came on stage, there's an aura around him, and of course his supreme confidence. Even though his voice was going, this was about 1977, I think. His voice was beginning to crack. then.
What's amazing to me about him, and they're true about others, and I think you too, is the skill which you recognize you have, and he understood it. He would go and swim underwater and do things like that to improve
I didn't know that.
his lung capacity. There always is, it seems to me, this is sort of what we talked about, in this marrying of skill with some sense of wanting to do it really well. I mean, you have it, and Olivier had it in a different way.
Yeah.
It's just the skill alone will not take you there.
No. I think it's something particularly American as well, as a foreigner here, because I'm not from America. But I think it's part of American character. Those great personalities like Marilyn Monroe, Sinatra, Presley, and all this. It's an American phenomenon. Some extra power that those people have. Maybe it's the cultural icons that they became that made them so extraordinary. Like Sinatra, for example, or Tony Bennett and people like that, or Al Jolson.
And it exists in every profession too. I mean, like Clinton has that kind of political genius.
Yeah.
People say, I'm also struck by the fact that when you're in the midst of somebody, you forget that they actually do span time. I mean, talk to Republican politicians.
Yeah.
And this, I suspect, has something to do with the affection between Bush 41 and Bill Clinton, who've become friends.
Yeah.
In the end, they've had the same job, which means they understood the loneliness of the office and what it's like to send people into battle, and they will pay a price. You understand what that means, the heaviness of that decision. Bush 41 did it, Clinton did it, and so on. And yet at the same time, there's a shared sense of what it's like to do something that very few people have done, and yet at the same time, there is also something that a mutual appreciation of skill. I mean, I think Bush probably looks at Bill Clinton and recognizes that he has certain political skills
that he didn't have. Yeah.
Clinton probably finds something in Bush that he doesn't have.
Yeah.
Some quality of Bush that maybe it's family, maybe it's whatever it might be.
Well, as Clinton found in Nixon, an encyclopedic knowledge of foreign policy. and for Nixon to have done the complete switch around from being an anti-communist, the Helena Gahagan Douglas
to go into China,
and then to go open up China and respect Brezhnev.
Yeah, it is, and Ronald Reagan too. Ronald Reagan,
indeed,
who spent his life as an anti-communist, and to end up as the guy who won the Cold War.
That's a journey. That's
a journey, but won it because he was able to have that relationship he had with Brezhnev too.
Yes, yeah.
When you look at actors, thinking about all the things you've done, are there people that had certain skills that you think, oh wow. I mean, I know gifted people who will say, I watch somebody do something and I just almost decide I can never do that, so why am I doing this? Why am I in this profession?
Other actors acting like that? Well, I think Marlon Brando is one of the greatest of all time.
What was it about Brando?
I don't know what it was.
Because you all say that, all of you.
Well, he was new when he made On the Waterfront Streetcar Named Desire. There was an animal magnetism about him, and they use these awful words today, choices.
Right.
I don't know what that means.
Right.
But he was a really natural, raw animal, and pure instinct, and pure intelligence, and relaxation. I think it comes back to that again. And he's always watchable. Always watchable.
Meaning what? You see, when you watch him, you see something that's interesting. He draws you in and surprises you.
Yeah, it's as if he designs his own set. He designs his own lighting. And Apocalypse Now, and he just emerges from the light. Yeah. And just that look.
See, you can do that. Go ahead, you can do it.
But he's in just an errand boy sent by grocery clerks to pick up a bill.
And then disappear back in the night.
It's so great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anthony Hopkins is starring in The Motorcycle, the world's fastest Indian, actually, which is about Burt Munro, who won the race at Bonneville Flats, right?
That's it.
An extraordinary story. It is in theaters now. Thank you for joining us for this hour, and my thanks to Tony Hopkins. Thank you again.
Thanks, Tony.
We will see you tomorrow night.